At the final moment of life, the wise often reveal the most profound wisdom. The Buddha's teachings before his parinirvana are like an undying lamp, illuminating the long night of ignorance in the hearts of sentient beings, whose wisdom shines eternally to guide the path to liberation. Outside the city of Rajagaha, beneath the twin sal trees, clad in golden green robes, the Buddha lay peacefully, about to enter nirvana. Countless disciples gathered around him, a sorrowful atmosphere spreading over everyone's heart like the thin mist of an autumn day. Some monks wept silently, while others chanted sutras softly. The entire scene was solemn and reverent, as if time itself had frozen. Venerable Mahasala, seated in the front row, wore a solemn expression. For many years, he had strictly adhered to the austere ascetic practices, which are two extremely rigorous modes of cultivation. Consequently, he was honored as the foremost ascetic. The householders live year-round beside graves or deep in remote mountains and forests, subsisting only on food obtained by begging with alms bowls, and their clothing is made by sewing together tattered rags picked up from garbage heaps. His practice within the monastic community was met with clear hardships and ascetic challenges. As he looked upon his departing teacher, a fundamental question arose within his heart. This question also reveals the common confusion in the hearts of many practitioners. The way, Shakyamuni Buddha, you are about to leave us, and the Dharma will be continued and transmitted by us. I have always strictly practiced the path of Bodhi and have taught my disciples to do the same. But I wish to ask, what is true practice? Is it strict adherence to precepts, diligent and arduous cultivation, or is there a deeper meaning? The Buddha slowly opened his eyes, his gaze as clear as autumn waters, filled with boundless wisdom and compassion. Assuming I have always observed your diligence, the practice of Timokkha discipline is indeed a very good method of cultivation, but actions remain actions after all. A true practitioner is not distinguished by external actions, but by the attainment of the four internal states of mind. Although the Buddha's voice was soft, each word was clear, like a bright lamp in the dark night, illuminating the hearts of every disciple present. The assembly focused their minds and calmed their spirits, unwilling to miss the Master's final teachings. The first level is the mind of equanimity. The Buddha smiled and said, "Suppose you still remember the poor beggar named Kamara from last year's rainy retreat season? He had almost nothing, yet he offered his only piece of cloth to the Sangha. At that time, the wealthy merchant Maha also offered jewels worth 1,000 gold pieces in veneration." Assuming a nod of agreement, "Yes, Bhagwan, I remember that you equally accept and rejoice in both kinds of offerings." I rejoice equally in both kinds of offerings, not because I do not distinguish between noble and base, but because I perceive the true nature of all phenomena. At the level of Dharma nature, there is no difference between jewels and pieces of cloth. Both are contingent Dharma treasures arising from dependent origination. This equality is not a superficial equal treatment, but an understanding of the emptiness nature inherent in all dharmas. The Buddha continued to explain, "When you truly realize this, you will develop an equal-hearted attitude towards all people and all things, no longer discriminating between superiority and inferiority, nobility and baseness, love and hatred. This is not a confusion of the phenomena realm differences, but a sudden insight into the fundamental unity. Equanimity enables practitioners to transcend the delusions of appearances and directly reach the essence of all phenomena." The Buddha paused for a moment, allowing the disciples to absorb this profound truth, then continued, "The second realm is the mind of compassion. Kasha, do you still remember the incident when Prince Ajatashatru killed his father to usurp the throne? Remember, Shakyamuni Buddha, Prince Ajatashatru, committed one of the gravest unpardonable sins, the patricide. Everyone believed that he was undoubtedly destined to fall into the Avicii hell. But when he came to me with repentance, how did I treat him?" The Buddha asked calmly. "The world-honored one compassionately accepted him, expounded the Dharma for him, enabling him to repent his karmic offenses and attain tranquility of mind. The Buddha paused briefly, and Kashyapa responded. The Buddha's gaze swept over each disciple present. True compassion is not merely superficial kindness or sympathy, but the recognition of the inherent Buddha nature in all sentient beings. Even those who have committed grave offenses have the seed of Buddhahood deep within their hearts. Compassion arises from an understanding of the true nature of all sentient beings, rather than from emotional preferences or judgments. When you face someone who has made a mistake, if you merely mechanically cite the precepts to condemn them, then although you may strictly observe the precepts, you may not truly possess genuine compassion. Compassion can see beyond external notions of good and evil, perceiving the inner potential and space for growth. It is not indulgence or permissiveness, but acceptance and guidance grounded in wisdom. The Buddha's gaze turned toward Kashyapa. Kassa, last month Elder Long contested whether the practice of secret austerities was excessively extreme and inconsistent with the spirit of the middle way. At that time, you felt displeased, thinking that he did not understand the hardships of cultivation, correct? Kasyapa's face showed a hint of embarrassment. Yes, it was respect. At that time, I indeed harbored dissatisfaction in my heart. Your reaction to differing viewpoints precisely indicates that your understanding of compassion has not yet deepened sufficiently. True compassion embraces diverse voices and understands different circumstances, rather than clinging to one's own position to judge right and wrong. Compassion allows us to approach various viewpoints with an open mind, thereby continuously expanding the boundaries of our understanding. The third realm is the wisdom of emptiness. The Buddha's voice, though clear, is resolute. Gaia, you once asked me why sometimes I give different answers to the same question. Do you remember how I responded? The Buddha said, "The Dharma has no fixed form. Teachings are adapted according to the person. Teachings are based on the diverse capacities of sentient beings." Exactly so, this is the manifestation of the wisdom of emptiness. The Buddha's gaze becomes profound. Truth is not a fixed, unchanging dogma, but a skillful means that appears in dependence on conditions. When you truly realize emptiness, you will understand that all phenomena arise dependently and are empty of inherent, unchanging nature. The wisdom of emptiness enables practitioners to no longer cling to any particular view or method, but to adapt according to circumstances and teach according to individual capacities. Just as a doctor does not prescribe the same medicine for all patients, the guidance in practice should be flexibly adjusted according to the varying capacities of individuals. Some monks believe that strict adherence to every precept is the true practice of the path. Some bhikkhus believe that as long as the mind is pure, external circumstances are not important. Clinging to either of these two viewpoints will lead to extremes. Practitioners who realize the nature of emptiness understand that precepts and rituals are skillful means, intended to help purify the mind. When the mind is already pure and tranquil, one should not cling to external conditions. But when the mind is not yet pure and tranquil, external conditions serve as a necessary stepping stone. The Buddha saw the thoughtful expression on Kasyapa's face, knowing that he had begun to comprehend this profound truth, yet still harbored some doubts. Indeed, Kakyana asked the Buddha, if all is emptiness, then what is the goal of practice? This is the fourth realm, the Bodhi mind. The voice of the Buddha is filled with power. Bodhicitta is the seed of enlightenment and the ultimate goal of practice. The practice is not for personal liberation, but for the universal salvation of all sentient beings. Kapil, do you still remember my experience of attaining enlightenment under the Bodhi tree? At that moment, I saw sentient beings suffering in the cycle of birth and death, which awakened in me a vast compassion and resolute vows. The mind that seeks liberation for the benefit of all sentient beings is called the Bodhicitta. It is both the motivation for practice and the goal of practice. A practitioner with Bodhicitta does not cling to personal achievements, nor is they engrossed in their own state of practice. Instead, they direct their attention toward the suffering of all sentient beings. He understood that true liberation is not about isolating oneself from society or distancing from the mundane world, but about remaining unstained by the dust of the world while living within it, achieving self-transcendence through helping others. The Buddha looked compassionately at Kakana. Gaia, your ascetic practice is extraordinarily diligent, but if it is solely for personal liberation, you will miss the true essence of the practice. A true practitioner constantly keeps in mind the sufferings of all sentient beings with the intention of benefiting others as the fundamental motivation. Venerable One, is there a sequential order among these four states? Equanimity, compassion, wisdom of emptiness, and Bodhicitta? How should we practice? Kasyapa joined his hands in reverence and respectfully asked. These four states are interdependent and causally connected. The Buddha's response is like nourishing rain that enriches the hearts of all. Equanimity is the foundation, enabling you to perceive the equality of all sentient beings. Compassion is the driving force that inspires you to willingly dedicate yourself to all sentient beings. Emptiness wisdom is the method that teaches you how to skillfully guide and liberate beings. Bodhicitta is the goal that keeps your practice balanced and unbiased. You can begin with any state of realization. As long as you practice diligently, the other three will naturally manifest gradually. Just like the growth of a tree, when its roots are deep, its branches and leaves flourish. When one state of realization is deeply cultivated, other states naturally manifest accordingly. At this moment, Venerable Ananda could not help but shed tears, choking with emotion as he asked, Bhagwan, throughout your life, you have taught countless beings and left behind a wealth of teachings. But for disciples like us, with varying capacities and aptitudes, which teachings should we primarily rely on for our practice? The Buddha looked at Ananda with a compassionate, fatherly gaze. The Agama teachings amount to 84,000 types, established to address the various afflictions of sentient beings. Those with sharp faculties can directly realize emptiness, while those with gradual faculties need to rely on various means. However, one should never cling to forms. It is like crossing a river with a boat. Once reaching the other shore, one should leave the boat behind and not carry it forward on land. The method of practice is like pointing at the moon. The truth is like the moon itself. Wise people, seeing the finger pointing at the moon, understand that they should look at the moon rather than be attached to the finger itself. Ananda continued to inquire, World-honored one, faced with the numerous paths of practice, how can we discern which truly align with the Dharma of the Buddha? I once told the Gamoro people not to believe something just because it is tradition, not to believe it just because it is authoritative, not to believe it just because it is a scripture, but to think for themselves, to experience it, and to see whether it leads to liberation and is beneficial. This principle equally applies to the choice of spiritual practices. Any method that helps cultivate equanimity, compassion, wisdom of emptiness, and the Bodhicitta is in harmony with the Dharma. In general, if a particular practice leads you to become more attached, arrogant, indifferent, or selfish, no matter how profound it may appear, it is fundamentally contrary to the Dharma. Upali, the venerable disciple, as a bhikkhu who strictly observes the Vinaya, has always adhered to the precepts meticulously and also urged other bhikkhus to uphold them. After hearing the Buddha's teachings to Gaia, he stepped forward to ask, Honored one, are the precepts still as important? Upasaka, the precepts are like the embankments of the ocean. They prevent the waters from dispersing. For beginners, precepts are an essential form of protection. However, as one advances in practice, the observance of precepts should shift from passive compliance to active internalization, ultimately reaching a state of holding without holding and not holding while still holding. The essence of precepts is to help us purify the three karmas of body, speech, and mind, rather than to constrain our actions. True practitioners of precepts understand the spirit of the precepts rather than rigidly adhering to the letter of the rules. Just as a doctor prescribes medicine according to the illness, the prescription changes with the condition, but the purpose of healing remains unchanged. Venerable Sariputta, with his sharp wisdom and keen mind, asked, Bhagwan, you have said that to see dependent origination is to see the Dharma, and to see the Dharma is to see the Buddha. So, what is the relationship between comprehending these four states and realizing dependent origination? Sariputta, the principle of dependent origination is the truth governing the operation of the universe and is also the core of practice. When you truly understand the principle of dependent origination, that because this exists, that exists, because this ceases, that ceases, you naturally cultivate an attitude of equanimity, for you perceive the interdependence of all phenomena. You naturally develop compassion, having recognized the root cause of sentient beings' suffering. You attain insight into emptiness, understanding the lack of inherent existence in phenomena. Moreover, you generate the Bodhicitta, knowing that only by helping beings realize dependent origination can their suffering be truly alleviated. Dependent origination is the thread that runs through these four realms. Understanding dependent origination allows one to transcend appearances and perceive the true nature of reality. Understanding dependent origination enables one to transcend the self and see the whole. Understanding dependent origination helps one transcend attachment and see impermanence. Understanding dependent origination allows one to transcend selfishness and realize interdependence. The assembly respectfully inquired, Venerable Shakyamuni, after your parinirvana, how should we propagate these teachings to sentient beings with varying faculties? My family, you shall be the inheritors of the Dharma after my nirvana. Remember, for those with superior faculties and strong resolve, the practice of the four states of consciousness can be directly taught. For those with average faculties, guidance can be provided through the threefold training of morality, concentration, and wisdom. For those with inferior faculties, the practice should begin with foundational practices such as taking refuge, generosity, and observing precepts. Regardless of the capacity of the practitioner, one must avoid two extremes. Firstly, overemphasizing external forms while neglecting inner cultivation. Secondly, disregarding forms altogether and falling into laxity. Form and mind should be balanced, like the two wings of a bird, neither can be lacking. A practitioner who only values form is like a bird with only one wing. It can never take flight. A practitioner who completely ignores form is like a boat without direction, potentially never reaching the other shore. As the sun gradually set in the west, the sky displayed a magnificent sunset glow, and the Buddha's enlightened life grew increasingly faint. But his gaze remained clear. Looking at the disciples around him, he delivered important teachings before his passing. My disciples, remember, the essence of the Dharma is not found in the words of the scriptures, nor in the formality of rituals, but within your own hearts. Sutras may be lost, and rituals may change, but as long as you can attain the four realms of equanimity, compassion, wisdom of emptiness, and the Bodhicitta, the Dharma will forever remain in the world. Do not be attached to my verbal teachings, but seek to comprehend the meaning behind the words. Do not worship me as an idol, but take my teachings as a guiding light to illuminate your path forward. After I have passed away, you will face various challenges and doubts. When you're unsure how to choose, ask yourself whether this action helps to cultivate equanimity, compassion, wisdom of emptiness, and the Bodhicitta. If the answer is affirmative, then this is a behavior in accordance with the Dharma. Mahakassapa, as the foremost disciple of the Buddha, was deeply aware of his great responsibility. He solemnly approached the Buddha and respectfully made obeisance, saying, Lord Shakyamuni, I will carry forward your teachings, allowing more people to understand that true practice is not in external forms, but in the transformation of the heart. I will do my utmost to guide sentient beings to understand these four realms and lead them on the path to liberation. The Buddha smiled and nodded, knowing that the Dharma lineage would continue through disciples like Kabaya and others. Even in the age of the Dharma's decline, true practitioners will still appear. They do not adhere rigidly to form, but instead understand these four inner states of mind, deeply realizing the essence of the Dharma. The afterglow of the setting sun scattered upon the Buddha's serene countenance as he calmly closed his eyes, entering his final meditation. The disciples present no longer felt only sorrow in their hearts. Instead, they were filled with gratitude for the Buddha's teachings and a resolute determination to propagate the Dharma in the future. In this materialistic era, people often get lost in various forms and appearances, pursuing external achievements while neglecting inner growth. The Buddha's final teachings remind us that true wisdom is not the accumulation of knowledge, but the awakening of the heart. True success is not the elevation of status, but the evolution of the mind. True cultivation is not the perfection of form, but the realization of the state of mind. Whether one is a religious practitioner or an ordinary person, the Buddha's four states point us toward a path of inner growth. Viewing all things with equanimity, treating others with compassion, understanding the world through the wisdom of emptiness, and pursuing development with a Bodhicitta mind. This is not only a guide for practice, but also wisdom for life. When we are able to transcend form and understand the heart, we can maintain tranquility and peace amidst the complexities of modern society and find true serenity and happiness. The Buddha's teachings have traversed over 2,000 years of time and space, still shining like a beacon of light in the darkness, illuminating the path ahead for us.